As I just wanted to show you the way that I like to do the maze mechanic in the Mr. Tirna Scithe dungeon. As a healer, I tend to get roped into having to do this mechanic, as most healers do. So if you're a healer and you want to know how I do it, or a different way to do it, or if you're not a healer and you kind of want to know how other people do it, this is just the way that I like to do the mechanic. So pretty straightforward, everyone's familiar with how it works. There's going to be 4 pedestals in the rooms or on the boss, and there's going to be an odd one out, right? So there's 3 properties that are sort of yes or no's, right? Flower or leaf, filled or unfilled, ring or no ring. One of these pedestals is going to have an odd one out, right? So like 3 rings and then a non-ring, 3 leaves and a flower, etc, etc. Now, the big ticket item with the way that these work is the entry pedestal, right? The reason being that because 3 of them have to have something in common, with the 4th being the exit room, and the fact that the entry room cannot be the exit room, right, because you just get stuck going in and out, you know that whichever pedestal is the odd one out has to have one of these properties missing, right? The 3 that have one in common have to have one of these properties in common. That's the big thing that makes this a bit easier for us, right? So we know straight away that the 3 that have things in common are now a flower, or they're filled, or they're a ring, right? So basically, as you're coming into the room like so, make sure you brush up against this pedestal as you come in, and you remember the 3 properties. Now, you probably don't even have to do this. Like when people run into the room, they'll brush past themselves just on the way in, but make sure that you just look and see what this is, right? So we remember our 3 properties: filled, flower, and ring. Then you want to go to the next one, and you want to remember the properties that they have in common, right? So filled, flower, ring. We go to the next one, still remembering fill, flower, ring. Now, this one only has the ring in common, right? It's not filled, it's not a flower, only ring, right? So the only thing we now remember is ring, and we go to the next one, right? Still remembering just ring. Now, this one also has a ring. Straight away, we had ring, 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 right? These 3 have something in common, therefore we know instantly that it's this one, right? Very straightforward. We remembered the 3 properties: fill, flower, ring, on our way in, right? Remember those: fill, flower, ring. Go to the next one. Ring is the only property we now care about, right? Because it's the only property in common. Go to the next one, and it's also a ring, right? So straight away we know that it's the 4th one. Has to be 4th one. That's the way this maze works, because these 3 have something in common. We don't even have to check this at all. Like, we know that that's the portal, right? So this was a very easy room, but I'll show you how to do another one. Okay, so we come into the next room just here. We walk past that entry keystone, right? And this one is empty, flower, ring, right? So we're remembering our 3 properties: empty, flower, ring. We go to the next one: empty, flower, ring. Now, the only properties in common are empty and ring, so we keep those in our head now: empty and ring. We go to the next one, and it's ring, right? Not empty. The only property between these 3 was ring, so now we know for sure that it is this one, right? Again, same as the last room. Don't have to actually check the pedestal itself, since there was a property in common with these 3, so we know for sure it's this one, right? Don't even have to check it. Very simple maze. So one thing you also want to remember that I actually forgot to mention at the start is that after you finish the first boss, like most people know, and you come down here, the Mistcaller boss will actually freely tell you which portal is first, because she'll walk straight through it, right? So again, she just walks straight through the left one, so I know it's the left one there. Now, it did used to be the case that if you kept following her, she would tell you which one's the next portal. However, I don't believe that to be the case anymore, so don't be too trusting on that one. But the first one definitely still works, so try not to get too distracted after you finish the first boss. Even if it was tough, there is normally a lieutenant here as well, so make sure that even if you're going straight into the lieutenant, or if you're drinking mana after the first boss, or you're just going into this pool, make sure you just remember to watch which way the boss goes. You don't have to mark it like I did just there, because it's pretty simple to see which portal she went through just by watching the boss. So she went left, so I know instantly that it was left without having to worry too much about anything. So coming into another room now, make sure someone bumps through this pedestal like I mentioned before. These 3 properties are full, leaf, and no ring. You can call it fill if you want, just whatever works in your head. For me it's full, right? So full, leaf, no ring. Those are 3 properties. You go to the next one, and it's just no ring, right? Those are the only properties that we now have to care about, is the fact that there's no ring, right? Those are the properties in common between these 2 is no ring. Go to the next one, and it has a ring, right? So unfortunately in this case, because there was no property in common with these three, like last time, we will have to check the fourth pedestal, right? Still remember that property of no ring, right? That is important. So property in common with these two was no ring. So now we check the fourth one. Now, if the fourth one also has no ring, this is where it gets a bit tricky, right? If the fourth one has that property that the first two had, no ring, then it's the third stone. If it doesn't, it's the second stone, right? So I'm going to show you that again because that is the most tricky part of this way of doing it, right? So we remembered full leaf and no ring. We walk up to this one, no ring is the only property in common, and check this one and it's a ring, right? Still remembering no ring. Check this one, it has no ring, and therefore it is this one. Now, the way that works in my head is if it has the property, it's a yes. If it doesn't, it's a no. Yes is positive and goes further, so it's the third pedestal. No is negative and hangs back, so it's the second pedestal, right? That's just how my brain does it. You can do whatever you want, but basically the way this worked was the property between these two that was in common was no ring, right? This one did have a ring, so we have to check the fourth one. The fourth one has that no ring property, right? So yes means third pedestal, right? Third pedestal, guys, 1, 2, 3 means it has to be this one. If it was no, i.e. if this one had a ring, right, means it's a no because it didn't share this property in common, then we know that it's the second pedestal because no is negative, and therefore it's less than yes, right? So no is the second pedestal, yes is the third pedestal. So we know that it's this one. So coming into another room, remember to walk past the entrance pedestal, and we have empty flower and no ring. Empty flower, no ring. Flower, no ring. Right, those are the two properties in common. Flower and no ring. We go to the next one. No ring. Right? There is a property in common with all three. So we know that it's instantly this one. Right, did everyone get how that worked? So we walked in, three properties, empty flower, no ring. Empty flower, no ring. Flower, no ring. No ring. Right, therefore it has to be that fourth one because these three have that no ring in common. That's the way that you're looking to do this. You're looking to find the properties that are in common and you cross out the ones in your head that don't. So three properties, empty, flower, no ring. Go to the next one. Flower and no ring are the properties we care about because they're the ones in common. Come along here and no ring. Right, because this is not a flower. So we only care about the properties in common. We cross out the ones that don't. No ring means it's the fourth one, because these three had something in common. Therefore, it's the fourth one. We come into another room here, walk past the entrance stone, full flower ring, that one was, full flower ring. Those are the three properties, go to the next stone. Full and ring are now the properties, because they're the ones in common. We go to the next one, and it's neither full or ring, right? So there is no property in common between these three, but we still have to keep that full and ring in our heads, right? So still keeping that full ring in our heads, we go and check the fourth one, and it has ring, right? It has one of those properties. Now because it has one of those properties, it's a yes. Yes means it goes far, which is 3, right? Therefore it's this one. Now that might be a bit confusing, and I'm probably not explaining it great, but basically what it means is that if there isn't a property in common with these three, which will be, you know, a large amount of the time, you're looking to check the fourth to see if it had that property that matched the first two. As soon as you have to check the fourth stone, it has to be one of these two, right? Can't be the fourth stone. As soon as you check the fourth stone. So I know that once I check this, it's either the second stone or the third stone, right? If it had a property matching, then it's the third. If it doesn't, it's the second, right? So our properties in common with the first two stones were full and ring. This does have one, right? The ring doesn't need to have both, just needs to have one. And because it does have one of those, it means that the third one is the odd one out. If it didn't, it would be the second one, but it did, so it's the third one. Okay, so another room just here. Walk past the entrance. It's empty, flower, and ring. Those are three properties: empty, flower, and ring, right? Go to our second stone. Flower and ring are our properties, right? So we walk past our entrance stone, empty, flower, ring. Properties in common are flower, ring. Still remembering flower, ring, flower, ring, flower, ring. Neither of these, right? So we have to check this fourth stone because there isn't one in common, right? Still remember flower, ring. Have to check this fourth stone because there wasn't one in common. Now, because this now has one in common with those first two, we know that it has to be the fourth stone. Again, that is a bit of a complicated way of doing it, but I think it's just, as long as you get the hang of that, that's where you're gonna get, you know, this method down pat. This did have one of those properties. It did have that ring that we remembered. Therefore, yes goes further than no. Therefore, yes is 3 rather than the no, which is 2. Okay, so we know it's this one. Do one more. So we walk past the entrance stone. Empty, flower, and ring are our properties that we remember. Empty, flower, and ring. We go and we check the next one. Flower is now our only property in common. Right, so we go and check our third one. It's not flower, right? So there isn't one in common between these three, right? Because it was flower, those are our properties in common, and this one's not flower, right? So now we have to check fourth. Now before I check it, I'm going to explain it again, right? Because this is the tricky part, like I said before. We checked our first two, the only property in common was flower. Then we checked our third, and there wasn't a property in common, right? It wasn't a flower. Now we have to check our fourth because there was a property in common with all three. Now, once we check this, it's either a flower or not a flower. If it is a flower, it has that trait in common, it's a yes, yes goes further, therefore it's this one here, the third one. If it's not a flower, it's a no, no is negative, negative is less than the yes, therefore it's 2. Right? Dumb way of remembering, but whatever. If the property is in common, it's a yes, it's 3, if it's a no, it's 2. Right? So, is it a flower? Yes, it is a flower, therefore it's this one here, right? Number 3. Now, I will just show you quickly before we go ahead and walk through this portal. There is a weak ore you can get that looks a bit like this, and I can link this to you guys if you want me to. Basically what this does is it runs a whole bunch of permutations on the maze, and it, after a while, figures out your maze route and it tells you which exits you're going to want to be taking. This may seem like cheating, knowing too much, etc, etc, but basically because of the way that Miss actually works, you know, you need a certain percentage from this maze, you need a certain number of rooms to be done. You need one of these mini bosses, right? So there's only actually a set number of routes that Blizzard will send you through this maze. So once you do the first 3 or 4 rooms, this will pop up because it will recognize which route you are doing. Okay, you will also have to do the first 3 or 4 rooms manually, but after that this will pop up and you won't have to do any of the stuff that I was just showing you. You won't have to go around and manually deal all the pedestals. You just walk into the room, it'll tell you which portal it is. Now you can see on my screen how these line up, right? Here's the entrance where we walk through, and you can see as I walk into the room, all of these circles are a pedestal, and the green one is the exit one, right? Shownhide Navigator, very straightforward. I would recommend getting this because, you know, why do the maze if you don't have to? But again, you will still have to do the maze for those first 3 or 4 rooms, so just keep that in mind. Okay, and the last thing I want to mention is just making sure that you do this marking as well. You don't have to be the group leader to do this sort of marking, you just have to be part of the group. There's multiple ways of doing this, so do it however you'd like. I actually have it macroed through details to put a new marker on. You can also do it through method raid tools. If you have that installed, you can come along to these key bindings and then throw some key bindings in here and whatever, and it'll, you know, place these markers down. Marking it is, you know, the last step. You can tell your group members, you know, it's first left, first right, whatever. If that works for you, that's great. But most people will visually know, hey, it's the one that's marked. That's the portal, right? Very easy to tell your group, especially in pugs. That, you know, anyone who's doing a mists and you come through this maze and you see a marker, you know that that's the portal. Right, so just make sure that you have a way of doing that. And I'm just going to finish up here by giving a different kind of representation of what I'm talking about, if it's still kind of not really making sense out of game, at least. So there's basically 4 scenarios, I guess, that you're going to be looking at when you do this kind of a method, right? 2 really easy ones, 2 somewhat hard ones. So we'll start with the easy ones. This is your entry stones, the ones on the bottom, entry stones, and these are your 3 properties. So here I've just written A, B, C to represent 3 properties. Doesn't matter like what they are, you know, fill, flower ring, fill, leaf ring, whatever, right? The point is you come in here on the entry stone, you know, think of your 3 properties, you note them in your head, and then you go to the second stone, right? Because you're going around in a ring here. You go to the second stone, and as you can see here, they're all in blue because they're all the opposite property, right? So you walk in, you've got filled flower leaf, and it's empty flower, no ring, right? Just the complete opposite. As soon as that happens, you know it's the second pedestal. Doesn't matter what the other two are, it's the second pedestal. The reason being that, like I said, the odd one out will have nothing in common with your entry stone, because your entry stone cannot be the exit. The entry stone must have a property in common with two other ones, right? So if it's completely the opposite, it's always going to be that one, right? So that's super easy. Don't even have to check the other two stones, it doesn't matter, right? You walk in, bang, 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 and if it's the opposite for all of them, you know it's that stone. Super easy. The other easy one is this one here, right? So you walk in here, same thing, you know your three properties in your head, fill, flower, ring, whatever. You go to the next one. The only property in common, let's say, is A. Doesn't matter what it is, right? Ring. Let's just say it's ring, right? So you know, ring in your head. You go to the third one, ring again, right? You don't even have to check the fourth pedestal. You know that that's the one, right? There's something in common with all three here, therefore it's this one. You don't even have to check this. You go in here, A, B, C, A in common, that one. Now these are the two tricky ones. Same thing again. You're coming in from your entry stone, and you're noting A, B, C. Right, doesn't matter what three properties are, fill, flower, ring, fill, leaf, ring, whatever. Go to the second one. Now the only property in common is A, right? So that's the one you've got in your head, A. Then you go to the third one, and it doesn't have A, right? And it's blue, it's not the same as the red, right? It's not the same, but you still have to keep that A in your head. You check the fourth one. Now, in this case, it is the same, so we go to the third one, right? You walk in, three properties, the only one in common is the A. Next one, not A. Check the fourth one. If the fourth one is A, the same as these two, then it's the third one. If it's not the same, like in this case, then it's the second one. Right? These two are almost exactly the same. It's just that the last one is red here, whereas it's blue here. Alright, these two are really easy. It's the opposite, then it's the second one. If there's something in common in the first three, then it's the fourth one. These are the two tricky ones, right? There'll be something in common with the first two stones, and there won't be something in common with this third one, right? You just have to check the fourth stone, because this is the one that's going to tell you whether it's the second or the third, right? If it does have something in common with the first two, i.e. A, then it's third. If it doesn't, blue A, then it's second, right? Try and remember that however you will. For me, it's just, it has it in common. It's a yes, positive, that goes further, so it's 3, right? This is like 3 in my head, so it's this one. If it's not A, or not blue, like it is here, right? Then it's no, it's negative, less than positive, so it's 2, it's this one. I hope that makes sense. If it doesn't, and you like the way you're doing it, then who gives a fuck, right? Just do whatever you want. But that's the way I do it in my head, if you have to do it on your own. It's obviously helpful if your DPS ever go and stand near here. If you have like range DPS, it's always helpful if they just blink to like one of the further ones, so you don't have to go and check it yourself. But if you ever have to do it solo, I think this is the best way to do it.